why did I hate Masters of the Universe? Well, I'm going to tell you in this video. I've seen some comments in the previous video about Masters of the Universe that I will refer to as He-Man from now on, because one, saying Masters of the Universe, I guess I could say Motu is what I've been hearing people say. It's just too long, but I want to use the word He-Man since we barely got to hear it. And when we heard it in the movie, it was a joke. And going down the rabbit hole, I found out more than probably I could have ever imagined when it comes to this movie. And now I understand why I hate it, because they didn't make it for me. They did not make it for me. They were only going to really pull in my demographic, but they really didn't make it for me. They made it for the modern day audiences, and you really can't do that. When I refer to He-Man being the 80s cartoon and that was it, that's what I was referring to. Is you can, if you try to modernize it, you're going to run the risk of not pleasing the demographic that you should be aiming for. And you can see right now I found a website, Cosmic Book News, why Masters of the Universe tanked at the box office, blame Barbie. Now, a lot of you were like, well, you're talking about you didn't like the movie, but you're not telling why. And I think I did say why, but I was coming back from the theater. Everything was fresh. I was trying to explain the plot while interjecting my dislike about certain things. But now I do a better job. And this article here points out some good things, right? First and foremost, He-Man is about power. And the first disservice that they did to this movie was removing He-Man. This movie was called Masters of the Universe. This movie should have been called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. But what I found out is apparently this movie was to kind of talk about toxic masculinity. And see, when we were 6, 7, ain't nobody thinking about that toxic masculinity. Nobody's thinking about that. Right? Now, I understand you got to, like, that's the world we live in today, but this movie was not He-Man. If you're going to think about making He-Man for the modern day, 2026, you might as well not even make it, because He-Man is from an older time. It was never going to be a hit. This was never going to be Barbie 2.0. This was never going to be that. Best case scenario, you have a theatrical run of $100 million, but all of us loved it. And you know what, man? Listen, I respect anybody that liked this movie, but for me, I hated it. And I just don't know, like I said, how you can be born in the 80s or the 70s, which was the biggest demographic for this movie, and really legitimately say you liked it. Like, I can't. He-Man was more than a cartoon for me. It was more than a cartoon. They should have leaned into what He-Man was. And if they wanted to talk about a message about masculinity, they could have done the perfect thing. They could have literally had a PSA at the end of the movie by Adam. Okay, you didn't have to carbon copy the cartoon, but if you were going to go that route, you could have done that. I think I would have accepted that more and laughed my tail off than having the movie ask, do you want to talk, right? So here's a couple gripes that I forgot to mention in my previous video. Man-at-Arms, the Man-at-Arms, had a flask in his armor. Like, he had a flask in his armor. That, to me, that was disrespectful. The second thing was that I wanted to bring out is Skeletor. This is a real clip from the movie. And if you've, by the way, there'll be spoilers in this video, but if you've seen the movie, you know that there's a part at the end where Skeletor is taking Adam through his mind. And he's showing Adam at places, and some of those places we saw him earlier in the film. And the first place they go is to the gym. And Skeletor, I kid you not, is curling some dumbbells and is in a Nike workout outfit. This is a He-Man movie. So I just was like, what am I watching here? But turns out that this movie was doomed from the start. It was never going to be successful. I found out that Netflix had it. Maybe not this version of it, but they had the rights to it and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, it wound up Amazon MGM, and we got the movie that we got. So I'm going to go through this article, and I'm going to bring out some things. You guys can check it out. I will put the link as the pinned comment. And if I gloss over anything or you want to read it in its entirety, I think you should check it out. Now, first and foremost, this article was written by a man. So because that's the demographic that was going to gravitate toward this movie. And more than likely, they would have been probably over 35, but closer to 45. All right. So if you were in the 50s, like I've had some 50-year-olds coming on the video, then you were a teenager or a preteen when He-Man was on. I was right in the middle of, I was probably, when He-Man was really rolling in syndication, I was about 7 or 8. So we're talking about the late 80s. But it goes on to explain some things that I wanted to bring out. Well, first off, they updated this, and the audience was 68% male. It was kids under 12 was 4%. And obviously, to have a successful movie, you have to bring in multiple demographics. Like, there's a couple movies out there now that are getting massive word of mouth. It reminds me of what Sinners was doing last year, and those movies are Backrooms and Obsession. They're made on a fraction of a budget and killing the word of mouth. So they're gaining an audience, while He-Man, in my opinion, alienated theirs. All right. So He-Man opened to just $29 million on a reported $170 million budget. All right. So what went wrong? Okay. So Travis Knight did it, blah, blah, blah. We go through here. The marketing missed the young audience. The studio buried its biggest star, which is Jared Leto, and the early press sent red flags to fans. And the whole thing seemed built around chasing another Barbie instead of selling He-Man as He-Man. In bold letters, and these ads are ridiculous. In bold letters, He-Man. Okay? He-Man is not Barbie. He-Man, literally He-Man. Literally the same. I thought it was kind of funny that they made the joke at the end, because as a child, nobody ever thinks about, you're singing He-Man, but you're saying the same thing, He-Man. You're saying that, right? It's kind of redundant, but it worked. No child thought about, even as an adult, you don't think about, man, He-Man sounds stupid. Nobody says that, right? So they buried the fact that they weren't selling this as He-Man. They was selling this as, I guess, a man. All right. So it goes into some other stuff as well. The marketing missed the audience. And this person says, I can speak to this directly, that the basic problem is that a lot of moviegoers had no idea the film existed. So, of course, when I saw it, I knew it was going to be a disaster, but instantly I was transported back to my childhood. My own 18-year-old would not go see Masters of the Universe with me. His reason was simple. He knew nothing about it and never seen a single promo. All right. So then it tells you some stuff about Obsession and what they're doing. Masters of the Universe felt like it was sold through the old playbook for a brand that has been out of theaters for decades. Nostalgia was never going to be enough. Parents who grew up with He-Man might be curious, which is what I was, but a $170 million franchise play needs younger movie-going audience. So they brought us in, and for me, they failed. So you were never going to bring in the new demographic. You really weren't going to do that. You weren't going to pull in the modern audience and stuff like that. All right. So here it is. Okay, Jared Leto was not found. That doesn't bother me at all. But Skeletor is a big part of He-Man. All right, so check this out. The EW story, which is Entertainment Weekly, raised red flags. Before release, the big Entertainment Weekly cover story was supposed to build hype. Instead, as red flags at the time, it raised red flags. As we flagged at the time, it raised red flags for longtime He-Man fans. Longtime He-Man fans, which is what I am. The piece leaned heavily into reframing He-Man as a story about toxic masculinity, vulnerability, and what it means to be a man in 2026. We're making a movie about a cartoon character that raises a sword, utters the words Grayskull, and turns into the most powerful man in the universe. What do we care about what it means to be a man in 2026? And you still could have done this while not being a chump. He didn't have to be overboard. He-Man was a good dude. He never mistreated the ladies. You know what I'm saying? You could have done this right. What it means to be a man in 2026. It also described Prince Adam as a depressed corporate HR worker who would rather dance than fight. So let me tell you what I didn't like about it. This movie was not about He-Man. The jokes did not land. I didn't know if I was watching Top Secret or Airplane, or if I was watching The Chappelle Show, or if I was watching The Naked Gun. I mean, I was waiting on Liam Neeson to the jokes to me didn't land. It was too jokey. Well, you couldn't take it seriously. Yes, you could have. I mean, we go to the movies and we watch movies about alien creatures trying to snap out half of humanity. So I don't want to hear about what it's not supposed to be taken serious. Yes, it is. Every movie is supposed to be taken serious. Even if the joke is taking itself seriously, right? They call that meta. So it was too much jokes, too many jokes. To me, they demoralized He-Man. The special effects were atrocious. It wasn't cohesive. It was, I mean, the sexual innuendos was, and I know people like to do it with the 80s cartoons. They like to bring in, that He-Man was this and that and stuff like that. And I just think that, that ruins what I grew up with. I've never ever once thought that He-Man questioned his sexuality. Not one time. Not one time. So I didn't like the special effects. I didn't like it was too much. It was they could have kept the movie on Eternia, never left Eternia. Maybe in setting up a sequel, they could have mentioned Earth or brought something. Maybe Skeletor wanted to do something. This movie never had to have to do anything with Earth at all, right? So, or maybe you bring Earth in later, but it could have been maybe a semi-origin story, maybe explain the backstory of the sword and how he became He-Man and stuff like that. What they were doing, it was just bad. It was. The special effects were horrible. The writing was horrible. The acting was not the best. To me, it just wasn't a cohesive movie. Skeletor was okay, but then I'm listening to him, and I didn't know you know what he sound like? Skeletor sound like a cross between Bane from The Dark Knight Rises and V from V for Vendetta. I mean, it worked. It wasn't horrible. I enjoyed Skeletor for the most part, but it just like the jokes did not hit. Then why did you have to talk about, like he mentioned about something about He-Man's shiny sword, and it was implied that it was not the sword he was talking about, but it wasn't my He-Man. That's the problem. Again, He-Man was never going to shatter box office records. Best case scenario, you make $100 million and it's a cult classic. And every one of us love it. But for a fan that grew up on a sword and sorcery action hero, the messaging made the movie sound more interested in deconstructing He-Man than delivering him. The core audience noticed a chunk of them checked out before opening day. I wanted to leave this movie theater. The issue was not that Masters of the Universe needed to be a carbon copy of the 80s cartoon. The issue was that the pitch did not sound confident in He-Man being He-Man. Of course they weren't confident. They literally did not use He-Man. Instead, the movie was titled, look at this again. I want you to watch this again. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. First and foremost, the cartoon was about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, not Masters of the Universe. So that was the first sign that this movie was going to be terrible. Fans wanted to see Fans wanted the most powerful man in the universe. The interviews made it sound like the movie was embarrassed by him. This dude says, He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe, runs to the screen, and punches it. Like, I get it, man. I get that we got to modernize everything and everything has to have a message and all this. Like I said, you know what? You know what's funny to me is, we talk about nostalgia and how I'm hearing that like Polaroid cameras are making a comeback because people can't escape it. Every time they want to move forward, something brings them back and something old becomes new again. It has a resurgence of interest, right? In the 80s, we had it, bro. 80s was fantastic. No internet. Computers were early stages. And every single cartoon, every single Alvin and the Chipmunks, G.I. Joe, Thundercats, Gummy Bears, they all had the same thing, a PSA. He-Man, Orko, whatever the show was about, they had a message at the end of it. And then TGI Fridays and all them, look, even Full House and all them, they had like, this is what happened in the show. Or they would have a message in that they could have done it that way. Like, literally, the perfect thing would have been to have him say, Adam had trouble talking about his feelings, or Adam felt this way. But then meta, and they could have cut back throughout the movie. They could have went straight meta. They could have cut back through the movie and been like, but sometimes it's okay to talk about your problems. You don't always have to use your fist to solve a problem. He-Man. Like, literally, bro, we would have ate that up. We would have ate it up, man. Ate it. If they were going to lean into it, they should have just leaned into it. The movie kept making fun of He-Man. Yeah. Just before release, the actor who plays He-Man appeared on The Tonight Show for a bit that played the character for laughs and poked fun at He-Man. The hero he was supposed to be selling. All right? So it was a part down here too, and then they talk about the little meme. The same self-mocking instinct is all over the movie itself. In our review, I gave it a 5 out of 10. It has its moments, but the jokes constantly undercut the epic scenes, and it never fully commits to what it wants to be. When the marketing and the movie both seem embarrassed by the source material, you signal to longtime fans that this one is not really for them. Worst, you give everyone else no strong reason to care. Amazon and Mattel chased Barbie. Master the it tells you about the marketing or the promotional. I don't want to say the word, but the movie was in limbo to be made. The key players were Mattel Studios, Robbie Brenner, a Barbie producer. They wanted this thing to be Barbie. Wow. Telling producers that she could make lightning strike twice. The plan was to run the Barbie playbook on He-Man, irrelevant, self-aware, 4-quadrant crossover appeal, and built to turn a toy brand into a cultural event. But He-Man is not Barbie. And this is probably the best part. Masters of the Universe is a male-skewing sword and sorcery action property closer to Marvel, Star Wars, Conan, and fantasy adventure than a pastel pop comedy about dolls. The winking, self-depreciating tone that helped make Barbie a $1.4 billion phenomenon is a much stranger fit for a property built around muscles, monsters, swords, lightning, and mythical fantasy battles. And there you go. He-Man needed to be cool. Masters of the Universe sank under the weight of several problems at once. A campaign that missed younger audience, a buried star in Jared Leto, a cover story that spooked the base, a tone that mocked his own hero, and a top-line strategy built on copying a movie with which it had nothing in common. So you didn't make this for us. You know what? It's funny. You made this. You made this for money. You made it for money and you missed. So you trying to copy Barbie instead of doing what you should have done, which is prioritize the core fan base. And you know what else? You know what else is crazy? Is with all the stuff that's going on in today's world, like you literally have a dude who, look at this guy. let me pull this guy up. I gotta bring it up so you can see it. Positioning. Let me bring this stuff up. Look at the muscles in this guy. You know what's funny to me is when I was younger, He-Man reminded me of Arnold Schwarzenegger. The closest dude, like at the time that this cartoon was in its prime, that you were probably going to see is Arnold Schwarzenegger. As a matter of fact, that's who he was based off of. Conan the Barbarian. I can't talk for some reason today. And this movie is about men and muscles, bruh. And I'm not even gonna say pause because pause is I'm too old to say pause. I don't need to say pause. This movie is about men and muscles, bro. We didn't have to do all of that. You could have, if you wanted to lean into camp, you could have been campy and still did the movie justice. But instead, you wanted to chase Barbie, make it something it wasn't. You had to downplay what He-Man actually is. His superpower is being the strongest man in the universe. But this movie had to show you that sometimes you don't need to use your muscles. Well, maybe we want to see muscles being used. Maybe men are so done with, being called toxic or whatever. You can't. It's almost like they were afraid. They were afraid to allow He-Man to be He-Man. I mean, we just got out of all this. I don't think the movie was woke like the Marvel Cinematic Universe was. I didn't have a problem with Tila whooping at him at the beginning. You know what I'm saying? She was twice as big as him. Tila, none of that stuff bothered me. And she was playing around with them. None of that stuff bothered me. Him being saved by her, nothing about that stuff, because she was bad in the comic. In the show. Tila she could hold her down. She wasn't like a scrub or nothing. So I don't have no problem with that. She didn't do something to save him and like to emasculate him or nothing like that. Just let He-Man be He-Man, bro. Just let it. They weren't going to find that, like, literally the closest person to this guy would have been Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, instead of Dolph Lundgren was cut back in the 80s. He was cut. Because listen, if you think about this, take away Adam Schwarzenegger's Austrian accent. Straight up, he got 100% an American accent. We're talking about 1987. He-Man is in its prime, its pinnacle, 1987. And if Arnold's accent was so thick that he couldn't cover it up, it became part of his characters, which nobody ever talked about, by the way. You didn't see, like, it became part of his character. So for the sake of this, or even if you want to imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger, imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger. Well, he was already the barbarian, Conan. So I don't know but throw Conan out and put Arnold as He-Man. Not only could you see him doing Prince Adam, you could also see him doing He-Man. With or without the wig. I mean, like, that is He-Man. Literally, that is He-Man. Arnold Schwarzenegger, prime Arnold, was probably who He-Man was based off of. Like, real talk. He coming from pumping iron and all that stuff. And I understand that times change. And you have to adapt with them. But sometimes you just leave stuff alone. Listen, It's things that we can't say or do now that I used to do when I was a child. There are many, many words. There are many, many words. It's two in particular. I'm not going to say them now because I'll get canceled. But you could have done He-Man justice and still not been degrading to, because there was nothing about the He-Man cartoon that was degrading. If anything, He-Man was the one. Listen, Adam was the butt of all the jokes. I remember, and I brought this up in my review. Since Adam and He-Man were the same person, Adam would always have to disappear. He was just like any other superhero who has a secret identity. Because they don't want anybody to suspect that they're the person, they have to play complete opposite. Superman is stumbling and bumbling. Adam even talked like this. Adam, when he was Tila, like when his voice went up, Tila, what do you mean? Like it went up. And then when he was Adam, he was He-Man, the most he hit the voice, the octave drop, everything, bro. You could have just done that and left it alone and still not been so. But Adam was the one to me in the cartoon that was done a disservice. Like, but I understood why he was doing it. He had to protect. I mean, literally, He-Man looked just like Adam, just with a slightly darker hair. He-Man's hair was like gold. Adam's was blonde. Apparently, the transformation changed his hair as well. So for me, again, this was not my He-Man. And if you liked it, then good for you. I will never, ever watch this movie again. I have not. I think what I am going to go do is if I can find the cartoon from like the early 2000s, I've been hearing great things about that. I will, because I'm going to be real with you. My He-Man is this guy right here. This is my He-Man. This is my He-Man. That's my He-Man. Because to me, you talk about nostalgia, right? And like one thing I can say about my generation, or maybe it's just me, is like when it comes to it's hard for us to see anybody else doing something. So the voice actor for He-Man is great. Like, for instance, let's go back and talk about Superman 2026. Nobody would have cared if you literally took out John Williams' theme from 1978 and used it in Superman 2026. The same note, the same exact. No one cares if you didn't modernize the He-Man theme. It might have even been better. Maybe you could have had two versions. Maybe you have I get trying to modernize it, and maybe you do it justice, but I'm saying if you didn't, nobody would care. We have a hard time, like, maybe it's just me, especially with stuff from my childhood, man. Inspector Gadget, Smurfs, Gummy Bears. I was turning into, Batman, the animated series. I was turning into a teen with gargoyles and all that stuff. DuckTales, like that whole thing, right? So anyway, I didn't even realize what they were doing to the movie until it was over. Like, to me, they just ruined He-Man. They ruined it. And again, it was never going to be a smash. But we would have walked out, because, listen, when you hear the He-Man thing, you literally feel like you can do anything. That's what He-Man was for. And then as you grew up, you understood, okay, I can't go out there and move. But if you were to put on He-Man, you would feel like you could do it. And I would love to play it, but it's copywritten, so it'd claim the. But if you played the He-Man theme right now, if you went outside and you had to move a rock or something, and you put on He-Man, you would literally start just. How many of us used to grab a sword, go get a stick, and put it in a little satchel on the back? And if you grabbed it, I have the power. Like, we all did it. So that's my problem with He-Man Masters of the Universe, or I should say Masters of the Universe. There was little to no He-Man. And when he wasn't He-Man. He was just a man, and he was barely that. So anyway, let me know if you got any more questions and leave it in the comments, I guess.